Hello and welcome to week 2 of The Listening Path, a program created by Julia Cameron. I have done an introduction video to describe what the program is about, the different tools that we use. I'll leave that linked above, might be on this side, might be on that side. I also, during the introduction, mentioned that even if you can't continue the program, that isn't a bad thing. You can always pick it up again when the time becomes available. Because when we start things like this, our schedules may vary, life happens, and that's okay. It just maybe wasn't the time to work on the program. Now, this week, something I will mention. I am surprised that week 2 wasn't divided because, as you can see, there's quite a chunk of reading compared to what the other weeks have. And this particular week also includes 18 different exercises. If you're working the program with a copy of the book, then I personally would recommend stretching it into 2 weeks because there's quite a bit of information to read and process. As I've mentioned, there are 18 different exercises to try. So 1 week is rushed for all of that. For folks who are following along with the videos, I will continue to put them up each week. And again, I've also mentioned in the introduction video that if you find you're getting behind or you just want some extra time to do activities or process some of the information, then you can always pop the videos into your Watch Later folder. Week 2 of the program is about listening to others. And part of the reason that there's so much reading to this one is that Julia meets with a number of her friends who all have different careers and different ideas and suggestions about how listening impacts not just their work, but their personal relationships. Many of the exercises are quite similar in terms of getting in touch with friends, maybe going for a walk, having a phone conversation, and really paying attention to your own listening skills and what you're actually hearing your friends say. In this video, I'll just be reading 4 of the exercises. The 4 exercises will give you an idea of assessing how well you're listening, as well as how to fine-tune some of those skills. On page 59, this week we will build upon the habit of listening to our environment and begin to consciously develop the habit of listening to others. We may become aware of a habit of interrupting or of thinking of our response while another is talking instead of really listening. Or we may find that we listen too much without responding, or that we listen to those we should not. No matter how good a listener we believe we already are, it is possible to listen more closely to those around us. When we do, the insights our fellows will offer are always surprising and unexpected. When we listen to others, we connect to others. In the section that follows, I write about listening, but I also listen to those who listen well. Their insights add to mine. And I know for myself, there are times certainly when we're having a conversation and your mind is thinking of a response depending on the topic, everything else, and it doesn't hurt to assess and determine, are we really listening as well as we should be? Are we really hearing what the other individual is saying? Julia begins with the music of conversation. The second tool of the listening path asks us to listen to others, to tune into what they're actually saying, taking in their words and their intentions. We're asked to listen fully, to register the emotion, the tone, and pitch of what's being said. We're asked to register the mood of the speaker to correctly interpret the message being conveyed. I know for myself those are all very crucial points, and it's certainly something to keep in mind whether we're reading a text from someone, which is also a way of communicating, or whether we're speaking with them face to face. Equally important is that if you're not sure, ask for clarification, because I know myself, I've thought certain things or felt certain ways, and it turns out I had misinterpreted, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't asked for clarification. I'm fine can be said with sincerity or sarcasm. And yes, I have a note here of someone who I know says that constantly, and they don't really mean they're fine. It just means things are not going very well. And that, again, is part of tuning into how well we listen, is also knowing who we're speaking to. Obviously, if it's a friend that we've been in contact with for quite a while, we can sense from the words they use, not just their tone and, body language, other things. So there really is a lot to this skill of listening to the people in our lives. The tone carries as much information as the words themselves. I'm fine may mean just the opposite. It's up to us to decide. Reporting in on the state of our health, I'm fine, may be accurate or filled with denial. Often we must check in with our intuition to correctly interpret the statement. Two kinds of listening are required: inner listening and outer listening, listening to ourselves and to the others. Genuine conversation requires both forms of listening. Without intending to lie, a speaker may gloss over more difficult feelings. I'm fine becomes the socially acceptable bromide. As the listener, it's up to us to dig deeper. A softly stated query, really, may lead to more exploration and revelation. Ruefully, the speaker may admit that they're not perhaps fine. To the contrary, they may be under siege by difficult emotions. Our alert attention to their tone issues an invitation for candor. The resulting conversation has more depth and truth. Our alert listening opens the doorway to true intimacy. It leads us to questioning, not in a combative tone, but in a tone of genuine inquiry. We want to know, really know, the other's thoughts. Such attention is flattering and leads the way to authentic communication. Our attention invites attention in return. The listening path can be contagious. When we truly listen to another, the other may follow our lead by truly listening to us. In an atmosphere of such attentive listening, we find ourselves moving ever deeper into more candid and intimate revelations. Listening is done with more than our ears. We hear words, but we must attune ourselves to our partner's tone, striving to capture the intention beneath the words. Using our intuition, we may discover a very different message than the words convey. Take the matter of health. I'm doing well, our partner may say, but the tone says that doing well covers a multitude of possibilities, among them, not so well. Listening with our heart rather than our intellect, we're able to capture our partner's truth. Listening with our heart, we practice empathy, the secret ingredient in true understanding. She goes on to talk about body language and making note of a variety of things. Are people sitting with their arms crossed, legs crossed? The next part on page 63, the listening path is active, not passive. We're like catchers on the ball field, crouched and ready to field a pitch. We're alert, responsive, ready. We allow our partners to lead, to initiate, to pitch. We keep up, but we do not take over. Instead, we practice the listening path by following. Our alert attention is flattering. We gently tempt our conversational partner into making deeper and deeper revelations. We're pleased by their candor, which will match when it's our turn to share. We teach by example. As we witness others, we show them our respect. Sensing our genuine interest, they often engage more deeply and often at a level that's frankly refreshing. Small talk is set aside in favor of meaningful exchanges. Monologues give way to dialogues. Sharing becomes more even-handed. As we partner others through our listening, we may find ourselves partnered in return. As I read that section, it made me think about the number of times during a live stream I've mentioned that we're at the 2-hour mark, and the guest seems to be completely surprised that that much time has gone by. And I believe a big part of that is because we're so engaged in the conversation. And if you've been to my live streams, they go all over the place. But we definitely tend to cover a lot of ground, a lot of conversation, very interactive viewers, and I try and get all the comments up as we're engaged. And that really is a lot about that active listening and allowing people that opportunity to share and chat and not stressing about the time, which I personally very much enjoy. And a big thank you to everyone who has come on my live streams. They've always been a super fun time and so much learning and interesting conversation. On page 65, Julia says, listening to others, we register how able they are to engage deeply. And I mean, that's part of this whole process as well, is not only are you listening to the other person, but you're also assessing whether, one, they're listening to you and where and how that conversation is going. I know for myself, there are times when I've noticed I'm having a conversation with someone and they're just not there. They may have other things on the go, there may be other issues going on for them, but it just doesn't make you feel like continuing with the conversation. That also is a time when it would be helpful, and I know I need to do this myself as well. If something else is going on, then just let someone know that it isn't that you're not interested or you don't care. It's just right now you have a little too much perhaps on your own plate to help with either the situation or fully engage in the conversation. On page 68, Julia talks about having believing mirrors in your life. These are people in our lives who speak openly, honestly, and provide support and encouragement with our goals and dreams. She also says, believing mirrors prove themselves over time. Gerald Hackett has been an invaluable friend for more than 50 years. Gerald's level-headed and calm. Presented with a dramatic situation, he listens carefully and then defangs the drama. Now, another person that Julia talks about as one of her listening mirrors, and people who have been encouraging her with various projects over the years, is Sonia Choquette. Sonia is the author of The Psychic Pathway. This is also a 12-week program, a workbook for reawakening the voice of your soul. Now, it was funny because when I purchased this book several years ago, and it was after I had worked through The Artist Way, I didn't realize that Julia and Sonia were friends. In the acknowledgement, Sonia says, "A special thank you to my dear friend, fellow psychic, student, and teacher, Julia Cameron, for her vision and insistence on my bringing the psychic pathway into the world. It was her psychic knowing that first noticed this book inside me 7 years ago, and in her artist way, she helped me lead it safely into the world. The psychic pathway led Julia to create the artist way. The artist way, in turn, led me to create the psychic pathway." From that, they obviously are both very close and believing mirrors for each other. And thanks to that friendship and bond, we get to benefit from self-help programs like the Psychic Pathway, which is about tuning into your own intuitive skills, and of course, the Artist Way, where we tap into our own creativity, bringing more peace and joy into our life. Obviously, then, part of this week's activity, or 2 weeks if you're doing it that way, which I certainly will be when I start working the program myself, is to look at the people you're connected with and who are your believing mirrors. Who is supporting you in your various goals and the dreams that you have, and not poo-pooing things that you suggest, but are encouraging and guiding and supportive, and you know they'll have your back and they're available to listen when things go well, and they're also available when you may be going through a rough patch. On page 67, the key to a successful conversation is reciprocity. If one person dominates the discussion, the listening path is foiled. Your turn, my turn is the rhythm that we're after. It's like a dance. A good conversation is a learning opportunity. Each person shares fully, and the witnessing partner takes in new ideas. There's a palpable current that we feel and respond to. We listen for our cues that is our turn to talk. We don't interrupt by jumping in prematurely. And I know sometimes I need to be careful with that, but again, we're all developing, learning, growing, and none of us is perfect. With that as well, I've talked about kindreds are not necessarily people who think the way I do or study things that I do or have the same spiritual path that I do. Kindreds to me are those believing mirrors, taking turns in conversations and being open and honest during a conversation. So again, it doesn't mean having to be in agreement. It's learning new things, sharing new thoughts, listening to different perspectives to both grow and develop. And sometimes during a conversation, you can agree to disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that. A very important point that Julia makes is on page 68. It takes patience to fully hear our partner. Sometimes their thoughts are complex and intricate, not easily attended to. We must muster our full, focused attention. Anything less will not do. Alert, serious, and empathetic, we signal, you matter. Deep conversation is the result. Conversation that doesn't feel rushed and is mutually satisfying. Respect for our partner is the key. As I mentioned, this chapter shares many of the conversations that Julia has had with friends. Many of them she's known for decades, and they come from a variety of different careers. For example, she has conversations with a couple of actors, a writer, a teacher, an artist, a journalist, a location scout for TV shows and movies, musicians, as well as a handyman. And each of them share what they found throughout their lives, the importance of listening, how they listen, and how they've developed their own skills. And that's why the chapter is quite lengthy, because she shares a number of different conversations. Throughout this chapter, one thing that did make me chuckle, back in chapter 1, she focused on Lily and the coming thunderstorm and the awareness of tuning into our environment. In this chapter, Julia talks about a problem with her landline, which, although she has a cell phone, is how she typically communicates with her friends, and that plays out throughout the chapter as well. So in the beginning, there's a bit of crackling and issues, and by the end of the chapter, that has worked out. On page 104, Julia says, I'm often met with resistance, which I would define as misunderstanding, when I first describe the listening path. It can be misinterpreted by people who hear me saying, only listen, never be discerning. But the listening path makes us more discerning. It's by tuning in, really listening, that we gain the clarity to know what we should not only tune out, but what we should steer clear of altogether. The listening path is also about listening to ourselves and trusting our impulses about who we in fact shouldn't listen to. On page 105, she goes on to say, nothing kills conversation more quickly than unsolicited advice. Arrogance is implied in unasked for guidance. I know better than you know how to live your life, is the message conveyed. No wonder we resent it. The listening path is built on courtesy, not arrogance. Unasked for advice shuts the listener down. The defenses, of course, when people do that, and yes, sometimes I'm guilty of that as well, and certainly try to work on it. I'm only trying to help, or I mean well. And again, the more we have those deeper, open, honest conversations, the less likely you are to try and give some unsolicited help. She goes on to say on page 106, the listening path requires that we listen to others without trying to fix them, and that we speak up for ourselves when someone speaks down to us. And both sides of that can be challenging, and again, that's why being aware of how we're interacting with other people, what words are we using, how are we coming across, but it's equally important to ask for clarification so that misunderstandings don't happen. On to the exercises. On page 73, enlist a friend for a long walk. Ask what plans, if any, are pending. Get current with each other. Think about a friend who would enjoy going out, getting into the crisp, fresh air if you have minus temperatures like I do here, or out for just enjoyment on a sunny day, and really tune into not just what's around you as you're walking together, but what each of you are saying and what's going on in each other's lives. Another exercise, this is on page 76. Collect a beloved photo of a beloved. What personality traits are apparent in the shot? Is there a song that resonates with the photo? Buy a card and send it to your beloved. Write, I heard the song and thought of you. With that exercise, you could, of course, do the snail mail and send a card or a small note. I'm guessing most people would likely send a text message or an audio message, but in any case, you're reaching out to let someone know that you've been thinking about them. Because I take a lot of nature pictures and pictures of my goofball kids, typically when I'm reaching out to someone, I'll send either a picture of something going on in my yard or something Tiki or Panther have done, and that's how I reach out. So there's a lot of different ways to let people know that you're thinking about them. I've mentioned this before through all of these videos. Fine-tune and adapt the program and the activities in a way that works best for you. On page 80, she has phone a friend and ask how they're doing. Don't hijack the conversation. Instead, practice patience. Allow your friend to speak without interruption. Does what he or she or they say surprise you? Are you learning to listen and listening to learn? That one made me chuckle because, of course, years ago, phone conversations were a regular thing. But now, with all these messaging, WhatsApp, Voxer, all the rest, people tend to send those short messages, whether they're text or audio, versus actually making a phone call and having that interactive conversation with people. Now, one difference, of course, is, and another way you could do this, is having a virtual conversation, whether that's through FaceTime, StreamYard, a different type of platform. On page 109, take pen in hand, name a situation in your life where, despite your friend's most insistent urgings, you know what you need to do, and you do need to take your own advice, not theirs. Are you afraid to take your own advice? Afraid to say no to your friend? Remembering that when we do what is right for ourselves, we also do what is right for others, whether it seems that way in the moment or not. Allow yourself the courage and the dignity to do as you see fit. Check back in with yourself. How does it feel, having taken your own advice? Do you feel a sense of relief, empowerment, optimism? As always, the chapter ends with the check-in. So making note with yourself, have you been doing your morning pages? Did you have your artist date and go for your 2 walks? I also keep mentioning if you haven't been able to, then please don't stress out or feel guilty about it. There were other things going on. There were other things that needed your attention, and that's okay. What have you discovered in consciously listening to the people around you? Do you find that you feel more connected to those you interact with? Was there someone you found you need to consciously stop listening to? That, in this day and age, may include various things coming up on social platforms related to certain topics and situations. Name one memorable experience of listening. What was the aha that came from it for you? If you're still here, thank you so much. You can let me know in the comments down below with a little thumbs up or a heart emoji. I hope you're enjoying this video series. I'm looking forward to getting started on the listening path myself. And as I said, I'll be spreading week number 2 across 2 weeks. And until next time, remember, be safe, be well, and big hugs.